Welcome back to Mariners Down Under. It's your weekly look at all things of the Seattle Mariners, just with an Australian twist. Now, this week, we're going to start our off-season episodes. We're going to go through each area of the ball club, and we'll recap the seasons that all of these players have had. We'll take a look at where they succeeded and where I'll also be excited to see them grow in 2026. We've got some big giveaways up for grabs still too. Our signed Logan Gilbert jersey is still available, and we'll be joined by Mariners arm and a bloke who was with the fellas as they prepared for the postseason in Austin Kitchen. We're going to be giving away some products from his coffee line, so you're going to want to get around that. Austin's also going to help us break down how the Mariners prepared for the postseason, and he'll walk through some of what happened during the postseason from a pitcher's point of view, which is just an incredible listen and well worth your time. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Our 2025 champion has been crowned, and it was the same as in 2024. The LA Dodgers once again proving to be the best team in baseball over the course of the season. So for the rest of the teams, that means it's time to get to work. Signings, trades, rumors, arbitration, all that good stuff. It's well and truly here. It also means that we are going to start our off-season schedule, and today we're going to take a look at the starting rotation for 2025. But first up, speaking of starters, we're still giving away our signed Logan Gilbert jersey. So that one is going to be given away once we hit 12,000 subscribers, and we really aren't far away from that at all. So make sure you tell your friends, make sure you tell your family, anyone else you come across, people in the office. This competition is open to everyone. So all you need to do is be a subscriber and be part of our little community, and you'll get in on the draw for that one. So as for our starters, let's talk about the year that they had. The pitching group as a whole ranked 13th in Major League Baseball with a 3.78 ERA and posted the 7th most strikeouts. But what about the starters individually? Well, let's break it down. First up for the rotation, that's Bryce Miller. Now, Bryce Miller is one of my favourite players, and seeing him work in the postseason and how he pitched, that has got me very, very excited for 2026. His 2025 as a whole, however, like a couple of our boys, it didn't go to plan. There were a couple of trips to the IL due to right elbow issues and a bone spur that left a lot of questions because, I'll be honest, the rumour has come down that he's not going to undergo surgery. And, you know, I'm not a doctor, but I just kind of assumed that if you had a bone spur, you'd want to cut that out. So he goes on the IL during the year. I wondered at the time if it was just maybe best to pop him under the knife and get that cleaned up. But after he returned in August, he's obviously followed the Mariners treatment plan, and we saw that velo climb, and we saw Bryce start to look a little bit more like himself. In 2024, Bryce was electric. He led all arms in F-WAR, and we saw that old Bryce down the stretch once he was back. So I think it's really important for us to realize that when you're dealing with an injury and when you're in and out and you're under the pump, there's no point directly looking into Bryce's numbers for the regular season. That would not be fair on him, and that would not be a true reflection on who he is as a pitcher. So instead, we're going to look at Bryce in the postseason. So in game one of the postseason, Bryce threw for 55 pitches. 6 types of pitches were pulled from his bag of tricks, but it was headlined by that four-seamer, which he threw 24 times. The big fella was up and about. Now, he topped out at 97.6 miles an hour. He threw a few sinkers, some of those with some serious heat on him as well. And considering the velo issues he had all year, he was struggling to hold that velo at different times throughout 2025. But throughout, that first postseason game, he held an average velo of 96.1 miles for the entire game. He finished that game with 4.1 innings. He gave up 4 hits and 2 runs, and it was a really solid outing. But then came that big game. So we smashed in that final game against Detroit. We smashed our bullpen. We smashed our starters. Castillo came in and pitched. Logan Gilbert came in and pitched. And Bryce was our starter for game 1 of the ALCS. And boy, did he show out. Like 6 innings, 2 hits, and 1 run. That was actually the first time all season Bryce got to the 6th inning. He threw 76 pitches, and What he did was he halted a red-hot Blue Jays order, and he put us in the best spot that he possibly could. If you look back at how the Blue Jays played against the Yankees, to have Bryce come in and completely shut them down was just absolutely phenomenal. Then he faced the Blue Jays again in that series, going 4 and only giving up 1 run. He was fired up. He hit 98.3 miles an hour, which I think was actually his fastest heater all year. Bryce stood tall when it mattered, and hopefully he can take that into the offseason and he can have a full year like this. Because if we can get a healthy 2024 Bryce Miller back, then look out. And like I said, injuries, it would be unfair to look at his year during the regular season and judge him off that. But from a postseason point of view, you can't fault Bryce Miller. The next player we're going to look at is Luis Castillo. And now we can judge Luis Castillo off his regular season because he is not named the Rock for no reason. 32 games, 32 starts. He was called out of the pen in the playoffs. He lowered the ERA to a 3.54. That was down on his 2024 numbers. Luis was steady for us this year. He gave us plenty to dissect in this episode. His fastball run value was 90th percentile, and he keeps throwing that more and more as he continues to evolve throughout his the later stages of his career as a full frontline starter. I think that at times Luis isn't truly valued by this fan base, and maybe because it's of the fact that people out there want his so-called money off the books for financial flexibility for us. But let me tell you something. If we want to look at just ERA, Luis had the 11th best in the American League for qualified arms. Now, if we look under that ERA rankings from 12 and on, behind him is Kevin Gausman, who's on 18.9 million. Then there's Framber, who got 18 million in arbitration. Imagine what he's going to get on the open market. You've got Yusei Kikuchi on 21 million and Jose Berrios, who made 19 million. Luis made 24 last year, and he, if we just base it off ERA, was superior than those players. So that notion of money can go in the bin. You had a guy commit to 5 years of a contract extension. You had this guy believe in your vision and where you're going, and he was your ace, and now he is an anchor on the team that you can rely on. So that first order of business of reviewing Luis Castillo was to put a little bit of respect on his name. Luis was great at home this year. It was a 2.60 ERA in 17 games, striking out 98 in 100 innings. Now, he did have some trouble on the road. That ERA ballooned out to 4.71, and there were possibly 4 or 5 really big games there where he got belted around, and that attributed to that number being as high as it was. His hard hit rate was also the highest of his career, placing him in the bottom 8% of MLB arms, which, is concerning. There might be some big decisions made this offseason, and perhaps Luis Castillo is part of that. But one thing is for sure. You put him on the mound in T-Mobile Park, and 9 times out of 10, he is going to will you to victory. And I sure have loved watching him work, and I hope I can watch him work again next season as well. For George Kirby, it was not the ideal start to the year. He started on the IL after some shoulder inflammation popped up. So at that time, apparently his velo was great, and apparently his stuff was great, but the arm just wasn't bouncing back. So he was reinstated on May 23rd, and he ended up finishing the year with a 10-8 record and a 4.21 ERA. And you have to be kind to him. You have to take into account that this was not a normal start to the season for George Kirby. His first outing against Houston, boy, was that a baptism of fire. It only lasted 3.2 innings where he gave up 5 runs on 6 hits. However, he did bounce back in the following months. He posted a 3.18 ERA in June, a 3.07 in July, and a 3.52 in August. September, however, for George Kirby was really rough. He finished the month with a 5.40 ERA. And George did get hit a lot this year. So in 2024, he gave up 172 hits in 191 innings, compared to 186 in 2025. And he threw only 126 innings this year. Again, 172 hits in 191 innings. That's last year. This year is 186 in 126. If we look at his pitch value, it's a 95 grade in 2024 for pitch value, an 87 in pitching run value. There's an 87 on his breaking run value. He's 99th percentile in walks in 2024, 84th in chase rate. His K rate's also 50% and his whiff rate is 39th percentile. In 2025, that fastball run value, that drops to 61, down from a 95. The pitching run value is at 63. The breaking run value, it's still good, that's at 78. His walk rate, that's 89th percentile, which is great, but the chase rate dips to 68th. However, his K rate and his whiff rate do jump, so there's still some real positives to take out of all of this. By no means was George bad. It was just a non-perfect year leading into it for a guy who really needs his routine, and I would imagine that that's really, really hard to deal with. And like with a lot of these guys, a big off-season and a really healthy spring, that will have George back to his best. And at his best, he's a Cy Young potential winner, and I'm really excited to see what he can do. Another positive for him as well was that his heater got a lot harder to hit this year. Opponents hit just 188 off it compared to 221 last year. So again, another huge positive for George and another huge positive to take into next year and continue to, find that form he had in 2024 and continue to build on it too. For Logan Gilbert, this was a tough year. He had a tough time with that stint on the IL, but he was still a really fantastic guy to have around the ball club. It was a grade 1 flexor strain that put him on the IL in April, and that's a really scary injury. That is connected closely to the UCL. Prior to going down, Logan looked good. He was 1-1 over 6 games. He opened things up against the A's as our opening day starter. That was March 27th. He went 7 innings. However, that would be the only time he would go 7 innings all season. In April, his other 5 starts before the injury. In those, Logan posted a 2.70 ERA with 16 hits and 7 errors, striking out 36. To me, and this is with zero information at all, I just wonder how much Logan was bothered by that injury for the rest of the season. He's a team first guy, he's a fan favourite, and he wants to win. Was he 100% right at any stage during the year? I genuinely don't know. It just seemed to me at times that he struggled to punch guys out. And I don't have any numbers in front of me, but I just remember seeing him get into deep counts a lot. There are 12 starts once he returned from the IL where he went 5 innings or less. He just chewed up pitches. And again, he didn't exit early because he was bad. It was just the count seemed to just continue to get away from him. The 4-seam up, the slider, and the splitter was still his main weapons. Pretty even splits with those from lefties to righties. And then that splitter, when it's on, it can't be hit. Batters were hitting just 119 against it. Now, rest is what Logan needs. And I'm sure with some health behind him, you throw in his incredible work ethic, he will be back better than ever next year. And I just would love to see him go deeper and also finish out games strong as well before he's pulled. But I'm thrilled he's in the rotation. And at the end of the day, I'm thrilled that Logan Gilbert is a Seattle Mariner and not another insert team name here sort of pitcher. And Brian Wu, we all know the story, right? Doubted out of college, turns himself into a legit major league pitcher. And then this year, Brian Wu went from a young player with potential to the absolute alpha and workhorse of this 2025 unit. He created a franchise record of 25 starts of at least 6 innings to open a season. The last player to touch those sorts of numbers for the Mariners was Randy Johnson. So some great company to be listed with there. Outside of picking up that extra responsibility within the group, Brian Wu's season looked a little bit like this. It was a team leading 186 innings. That's up from 121.1 last year and up from 87.2 in his rookie year. That's 15 wins, the 4th most in the American League. It's a 2.94 ERA. That's the 5th best in the American League. Only 61 errors. That is the 6th least of all qualified players in the American League. He did give up a few home runs compared to the other qualified players, but he had the 2nd least amount of walks in the league. That's only behind Tariq Skubal. 98 strikeouts placed him 5th with a sub-1 whip, one of only 3 players to do so in the American League. and with the third best average. The fastball, he threw 47% of the time. That got a 100 grade on its value, according to Baseball Savant. Hitters were batting 153 against it, way, way down on last year. That sinker, he throws at 38% of the time against righties, and that was hit a little bit more this season. 258 average up from 240, so nothing alarming. But if Brian Wu can tune that up over the offseason to go out with that just exceptional heater, then honestly, look out even more. The only downside for Wu, and it's not his fault, it was just that pec injury. And I wonder what might have been if we had a healthy Brian Wu rolling him out in that starter's capacity for the ALCS. But again, that's just dreaming, and that doesn't matter. But all in all for Brian Wu, that was just a wonderful year for him. We also had some other players contribute throughout the year within the starting rotation. Two of the names, one of them being Logan Evans. He played a major role for the Mariners this year. He featured in 16 games, and he took that ball when the injury sort of bug really hit us hard. He finished the year with a 6-5 record. There was a 4.32 ERA, and he threw 81 innings. For Logan, he threw the cutter, the sweeper, and the sinker the most, featuring the changeup and the four-seamer and the curve against lefties. At the end of the day, this was a rookie that was called upon to fill a role, and that's what Logan Evans did. The cutter was his best pitch, opponents hitting under 200 against it. And facing batters with no outs, he was cool as a cucumber, opponents hitting just 204 off him in that situation. As every young pitcher would face, with runners on, there's nerves, and the numbers show that. I also mentioned that he threw the changeup to combat lefties, and it really worked. He threw a tick over 12%. He threw that over 12% of the time against them, and they hit just 200 against it. So, that's a weapon there that he has at his disposal. So all in all, a great start to the big league career of Logan Evans. He is still a work in progress, and I expect his staff to keep improving, and I'm really excited that he's, within our ranks. And the last guy is Emerson Hancock. So for Emerson Hancock, it was a really, really strange year this year. He starts as the 6th guy in our rotation, and he finishes as a bloke with some real potential out of the bullpen. He started 16 of his 22 games this year, going 4-5 and posting a 4.90 ERA. It was a career high of 90 innings of work, and we actually saw the fastball gain over a mile an hour of average velo to sit just under 95. And when he moved to the pen, we saw a real explosion. That ticked up to 97, I think it was, in the postseason. We also saw hitters have less success against his heater, hitting just 194. That's compared to 250 in 2024. I feel like with his transition to the pen, there's a real option here for this bloke to be a really big weapon for us. So while it seems the door has closed on Emerson Hancock, the starter, I'm really excited to see what Emerson Hancock, the bullpen weapon, can be. Overall, I think you'd say 2025 was a down year for the rotation, but you do need to qualify that by saying that 2024 was a historically spectacular year for them. And it's always going to be tough to come out and be compared to that amazing year, right? It was injuries, it was guys being thrown off, and at the end of the day, no matter how you cut it, that's what it was. So we still have an elite rotation. We still have a bunch of guys here with incredible stuff and so much more to discover and improve about themselves. If we can have these blokes healthy and we can put some bats together like the group this year, then honestly, look out in 2026. Pitching is really tough, especially in the playoffs. And when the Mariners were eliminated, it raised a lot of questions for me. And it also raised a lot of questions for some of our listeners about how these players who are so routine driven, how they transition from regular baseball into playoff mode. And instead of guessing or assuming, I thought we should get someone on who has been to the big leagues on here. Someone who was around the Mariners organization as they prepared for their playoff berth. And someone who, in my opinion, thinks and plays the game with just an incredible level of preparation. So that's what we're going to move to now. Hopefully it's going to explain to a lot of our listeners about how different this playoff beast is and just how incredible of a job our boys did do to go as far as they did. So let's get into it. So, playoff baseball, well, that's a different beast. We have just seen that and been a part of it, especially when it comes to pitching. We saw blokes on short rest, no rest, and fellas coming out of the bullpen that usually start the game when the mound is fresh. And for many of us Mariners fans, that may have only been our first or second experience with that type of baseball and how our arms were used. So I thought it would be great to have a bloke on who's seen it all, a bloke who's pitched at the major league level, a bloke who's been in our system for a while, and somebody who really knows what goes on in a professional baseball clubhouse. So who better to have back on than my good mate, Austin Kitchen? Welcome. Thank you so much again for making some time for us.
100%, man. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So before we get into your season and how that wrapped up, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions just so that we can start to understand how different pitching out of routine is and start to humanize the players a little bit more. So my first question is, we've got Luis Castillo, we've got Logan Gilbert. They're both used in that marathon game 5 against Detroit. For Logan, it's 2 innings. For Luis, it's 1.1. How different or how hard would have that been for somebody who usually starts the game on the mound, bases are empty, stadium's buzzing, everything is fresh? How hard is that to go straight into the pressure cooker late in the game without their routine? Like, what's that level of difficulty that us fans we're not realizing?
I mean, for me, it's extremely hard, especially when, Logan Gilbert, Castillo, I don't even know the date, right? Last time they came out of a bullpen. So it's so new to them. And, I faced Logan Gilbert in college when he was at Stetson and he was even starting back then. So, this dates back for him almost 10 years, being a starter. And the biggest thing I think for them and how they're able to do it and be able to pitch well, be healthy, right, is being in that locker room for the ALDS. You see how guys move. You see the discipline. And for me, Logan Gilbert, Castillo, the same is for every pitcher, to be honest, on that staff, is their prep work never changes. For them, it is the same thing every day. They know what they need to do to get their body ready. And then as far as coming out of the bullpen to actually pitch that day, right? I look at it like I know they did their movement prep, how they warmed up right before the game even starts. And I think for them, the hardest part would be the catch play routine, right? You're on short rest 3 days instead of 4 or 5, right? It's just a completely different beast. And the one thing with those guys is how smart they are. They know their bodies. They know the feedback that their body needs to give them to be ready. And it's probably a whole new catch play routine, right? He's not going to be in the bullpen where I think he throws probably 30 pitches, right, before he heads out to the mound. Even that gets cut down, right? And for me, I just know Logan and, Louis, and I just know for a fact, man, they took care of themselves. They were ready. But even though you're ready, I know that arm doesn't feel as it would on 5 days rest or 4 days rest, right? So the average fan, I don't think they understand how much work goes into that. And even being with the training staff to get, recovery and to get prepped up. It's just an all day around the clock thing. But also I think it's a testament to them, man, how they want to come out of that bullpen. They want to pitch. They want to be available. And then also the playoffs. It helps a little bit for them with the adrenaline, what's on the line. You're not really worried about how you feel. It's just go compete. And everyone on that staff is probably some of the most competitive pitchers I've ever been around, where that's just all they know. As soon as they touch that rubber, they don't care how we feel, right? It's just you're locked in and you're going to find a way to feel. But it is extremely difficult. And I think it's a testament to them, man, how they're willing to just put in the work and be, hey, I want to be back. I want to be ready and help on this run.
So it's interesting that you mentioned adrenaline because I read a comment and it was a little bit tongue in cheek that Logan said he doesn't want to pitch without fire ever again. That entrance coming out of the bullpen, it's pumping you up. The stadium's buzzing. It's one of the biggest games in Mariners history. So he threw 2 innings that day. This is Logan. And then 3 days later, he's asked to start against the Blue Jays. So that rest and how that arm is feeling, that is not what he's used to. Is not what is ingrained within his DNA. So is that a weird feeling throwing on short rest? For a starter, you've thrown 2 innings, you come out, you've got to throw again. Like, are things tight? Like, for the average person, what does this feel like?
Man, it's like I said, it's tough. He's tight a little bit. And Logan's one of those guys, luckily, he has a rubber band arm. I feel like that guy can throw for days. But also, yeah, when you're pitching a high situation, adrenaline's going to be there. And sometimes that soreness the next day gets amplified just because of the moment and the setting of what you're in. And I just think for him going 3 days into that start, everything he did in that time period was, what can I do to make my body feel good? And I know him, he's real big on the mental side of the game too, and keeping his mind clean, strong, and staying positive with everything he's doing. But things need to be tailored in the routine, right? It could be a, random body part here, right? Legs are a little bit more sore. maybe they're really tight, right? Maybe spend a little bit more time on that. And if it's his shoulder, get the treatment you need. And then it's like, what can I do to make that feel better? So there is a tweak in the routine, and that is what can throw guys off a little bit. But like I said, I just know Logan from a standpoint of he's just going to get out there and go compete. He's going to do everything he can in that 3-day rest. But the moment that game comes, that game day, it's just, what do I normally do, right? You just go through your routine and you see what you got. You go out there, lay it all out there, and just go compete. And I just know that's what he's thinking when he goes out on that mound, not how he feels. But what can I do to execute pitches, sequencing, right? He's just a magician when he's out there and how he thinks. But to the average person, it is so much work and it's so much time and effort that I don't think anyone can understand the feeling in those 3 days leading up, knowing that you're on short rest. Because that's for my opinion, the mental side of it, knowing, okay, I'm cut short. I feel like I need to cram all of this in 3 days. And then also how do I tailor things? So a lot can be going on in the mind mentally. But I think how he looked, his velocity, his stuff, it's Logan Gilbert, right? I mean, he looked as far as the stuff, how he always does. So that tells me in them 3 days, man, he worked his ass off. He worked really hard to be out there and be ready and just keep that, that bulldog mentality that he has.
Fair when you've got no rest. Like, we look at Edward Bizzardo. So I'll start this by saying that man is a machine. Someone told me he pitched in all but 2 of our postseason games. He just kept showing up every day. But I want to talk about that level of usage, especially also when he was used so heavily throughout the year. Like, Munoz this year seemed to be 9th inning or nothing. It was very much that late roll. So Bizzardo got thrown to the fire and he succeeded for pretty well the entire year. So rest is not an option. Do we get to a point with a bloke like that who's been worn into the ground where potentially you can't throw your best stuff, or potentially are there some pitches that you can't throw because it's putting too much strain on an already worn out part of your body? Like, when you are ground into the absolute dirt, how do you show up?
I mean, honestly, it's all individual based. There's certain guys that they love that feeling of throwing all the time, right? And then there's certain relievers that, say you have an up down 1.2 innings, right? And then it's like, hey, I like 2 days in between, or I need a day, right? And that's the good thing with that staff up there is everyone communicates. Bizzardo, if he's not ready to roll, obviously he's going to communicate that, right? But I just feel like I'm one of those guys where I don't like the breaks in between. I like to continually throw and get it in, whether it's a 1-out situation, 2-out situation, if it's an up down, whatever the role can be, to stay in that groove and stay throwing. And for me, I don't even know how many innings he threw in the regular season, but it felt like 8. I mean, he had to have been one of the highest inning relievers in Major League Baseball. And then you match that with how he pitched, which was lights out all season. That guy, any role, any inning, he's just a Swiss Army knife. He can do it all. So for Bizzardo, I think he's just one of those guys that loves to stay in rhythm and continue to throw. Looking back at the beginning of the season, I think he was 94, 95, maybe, coming out opening day. And then we're all sitting in Tacoma. Well, we watch the guys, we support it. We're always watching on TV leading up to our game. And he's throwing 98 miles an hour, 60 something innings in, 70 innings in. And we're like, man, he's one of those guys that's getting better over time as the season was going. I think late in the year, the way he picked up, it felt like any role. I just think, hat off to him. I just think he's incredible. He honestly left a lot of us speechless how we're sitting there going, man, he's getting better after every outing. He looks fresh. The stuff looks better. And I think that's a testament to how hard he works, how he takes care of his body, his catch play. There's so many little things in between. But man, I just think he's a machine. There really is I don't even know how to describe him, to be honest with you. He had all of us in awe how he pitched.
It's a testament as well to people taking an opportunity when it's given to them. And it's a shame that there are rules in the collective bargaining agreement from a fan's point of view that there's only so many times you can send a guy up and down, because it would be amazing to just have this rotating door or year of there's people like yourself who love to just see you come up for 2 weeks, see what you can do, go back down, get some rest, come up again. People I don't think understand how grueling a season is on a bullpen and how worn out those guys are from all but week 1. After week 1 is through, you're not feeling fresh until the end of the year. So I would describe you as somebody who is a consummate professional and somebody who takes baseball and your body seriously. So you're the perfect person to ask this question to. For a lot of these players, this is the most they have ever thrown in their life. A deep playoff run, there's no days off, there's no rest. And rest and recovery is really important for a player. We've seen players break down following seasons of high usage. So what are some of the things that those guys are doing right now that the season's over to make sure that their arm is healthy? Is it to get off the elbow completely? Is it steering clear of physical weights? What is their process now so that they can make sure that, yeah, they don't wear themselves out?
I would say it's all individualized, where everyone goes to a certain facility, maybe a certain coach in the off season, and then working with Seattle, right? Everyone has some idea of how they want to do it. But most guys nowadays, the way that we're getting feedback on stress on the arm, the amount of innings that we throw, things of that nature, where when I first got in the pro ball, it was shut down, right? Like, hey, go a week or 2 weeks, just don't lift, maybe foam roll, right? Stretch, do some, obviously move a little bit. But nowadays, for me, this coming season, I felt great all year long, had no issues. But last year, instead of shutting down completely, I did something called an active shutdown, which I know a lot of players are starting to go to, which can just be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. 25 throws. And it's not even that you're trying to pitch and go through your delivery. You're almost like a kid again. Like a shortstop, you're just trying to throw from different arm angles, nothing of high intent. And I know a lot of guys are starting to do that route because there is some science on how that ligament in our elbow. I know the facility I train with put out a study on it where shutting down allows that ligament to kind of tighten up. And it's the ramp up process of going back into the season that can really shock that ligament in the elbow. And the active shutdown, even though it's low intent throwing, it's something that can keep the arm moving and keep the ligament stretched. And I'm sure I butchered some of that. I'm not good with all the science and the terminology of it, but I know a lot of guys are starting to do that. And, we feel better heading into that on ramp. And then as far as the weight training, I'm a guy that I just like to do 1 week. No lifting. Even, we were in taxi squad in Arizona. I missed 4 days of throwing. And it's like, hey, 70 inning season, 4 days, it doesn't make or break, right? It takes a little bit longer of a shutdown to stress those things. But I like 1 week of no lifting, kind of let the body heal. And, you slowly work your way back up, not going straight into heavy lifting. You pace yourself a little bit. And I know a lot of guys are starting to lean on that thought process of how to approach an off season. And I think that's why our staff here, luckily, look at Bizardo, look at Vargas, all the guys, Gabe, look at, the year that Gabe had and how they kind of continued to climb stuff-wise as the season went on. It looked like everyone got better as the season went on. So I think personally, that's how we try to approach it. And like I said, everyone's different, but it's all about kind of finding a recipe for yourself and knowing your body. And then the longer you're playing this, you really get an idea of what you need and what your body needs and how you respond. But I've seen league-wide, even buddies in different organizations and things of that nature, that's the route people are starting to take, is the active shutdown and keep things moving without stressing.
So we are a player's first podcast on here. We were speaking off air just about how it's just about uplifting guys. And I'll be honest, I've been quite worried about some of the guys from a mental point of view. That yell that we heard, it was the interview with Brian Wu. I'm sure you saw it. You just hear this yell in the background. And we all know who it was. We all know it was Julio. That kind of, I have a relationship with the guy. So I care about him more than the average player. Same as with you, with Charlie Bielenson, anyone that's come on here or anybody that I know hurts a little bit more. And when I heard him yell, it hurt my heart. Like I wanted the moment for that guy, but baseball is more than your last out. And then talk about a guy that we just spoke about, Edward Bizzardo, just unlucky. That's all it was, just unlucky. It was just baseball. We spoke last time you were on about some of the filth that can come through your DMs, how some people don't see the players as human, especially with sports betting. We look at the disasters in other leagues right now and just how players can be affected and people coming in. You cost me a parlay. Well, you don't think the guy feels horrible already. So from a mental health point of view, how do you as a player learn from your mistakes, but at the same time look inwards and go, I am worthy. I am worth speaking well about myself. I tried my best. I gave my best. How are these guys staying positive and making sure that, okay, we reflect, but we also build up again for next year too?
I would say the brotherhood up there, right? Being in a clubhouse, we're together for pretty much 8 months out of the year. And, we show up every day. You're with the same group of guys every day. And granted, yeah, there's some, small changes roster wise, right? Maybe a guy goes up and down, but for the most part, 90% of that roster feels locked, right? And I feel like when you have things of that nature going on, the way this organization in Seattle works is it's so family oriented. And I feel like every player, even a young guy, like if I would have came up there, I didn't see those guys since spring training. And, we go up there for that inner squad, get the pitch, and it's like you never miss the beat, right? It's just the connection with everybody. So I feel like the mental side, when you're getting some of the filth coming through or someone's battling with something, right? being able to look across a whole locker room and speak to any of those guys, get things off your chest, right? Number one, that's the biggest thing. And number two, they're there to lift you up and pick you up. And then, for me mentally, if you look in the mirror at the end of the day and you had a bad day, you cost yourself a game. I always try to be glass half full, have a positive mindset where I've never been able to look myself in the mirror and say, hey, I didn't give it all I had. Right. And I know a parlay can matter to somebody else, but I promise that parlay doesn't matter more than that every single pitch that is thrown for that player, every single bat or pitch that's seen. Right. So long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I gave it my all, which I know every guy up there every day, they're big leaguers. You have to, and if you don't give your all, you won't be there. So I think that's the biggest thing is leaning on one another. And, the organization, they have mental skills coordinators. They have a bunch of people. We've had more resources now to talk to people and be able to help and whatnot. And it's just for me, the Bizardo thing, even, I'm sure I can't imagine some of the messages that he had, but I don't even look at those people as real Seattle fans. The real Seattle fans aren't going to look at one pitch and say that defined his whole season. Because the way I look at it is there was 80 innings or something of like 2-3 ERA baseball with low walks, high punt. I mean, that one pitch can't make and break it. And I'm sure Julio, Cal, right, even Woody, pitching coach, everyone's probably there to support him and go, hey man, that one pitch, that one AB doesn't define you. And the same goes for an at bat or an error or anything that happens, especially on that stage. So I think the organization does a great job at finding guys that are great culture fits, but also great baseball players. And it makes that clubhouse enjoyable to be in and knowing you can voice to anyone at any time. So for me, that's the biggest thing.
So, as sad as we are that the season's over, it really, and when we look back, it was a truly incredible ride for the franchise, and you've got to take the positives out of it. I feel really lucky to have been a fan this year. Like, I know that the 2 times I came over, the energy within the place, even seeing the fans celebrating after the game, like we're lucky. It was a great year, and the fans showed out even to the simulation games that we had in the first round bye. And so I wake up because, like, right now while we're recording this, it's 5 a.m. and I wake up one morning and there's this taxi squad announced, and I'm like, oh yeah, righto, who's on there? Shit, Austin Kitchen's on there. Like, hell yeah, it's this thing of when people who've been on the podcast, good things happen to them, like you can't help but celebrate it. So you get this, I'm assuming it's not an email, I'm assuming it's a phone call, that you're on this 11-man postseason taxi squad. Talk to me about this call, what was said, and what everything was like for you, and what was required of you during these games too, because, mate, I was pumped when I saw your name on.
Yeah, it was super exciting. We actually we just left Tacoma. We just landed in Vegas for our playoffs, and it was the first day. As soon as we got there, John Russell, JR calls. It was Sami, Samad Taylor, Colt Emerson, a couple of us. He was pulling us in groups, and he just said, "Hey, we got the bye, right? There's no wild card for us." He said, "We just got a call from up top, and they're telling, hey, you guys are, being called for a taxi squad." And my immediate thoughts are, wow, there's not much in place yet. I didn't know about an inner squad. He didn't really know what was going to happen or whether you're going to be in Seattle, Arizona. I was just excited, because for me, I did the best I could all season to help Tacoma win, but then also, try to make a case for myself to get an opportunity in the big leagues. And for me, it felt like a huge reward to some extent, because it made me feel like they noticed what I did. They saw there was value and they said, hey, if there's an emergency, we believe in you and we trust in you to be a guy that can fill a role. And, granted, it could have been maybe one outing out of the whole playoffs, but there's always a job and it's an opportunity. And I said, man, what an opportunity to go down there and whatever happens, happens. And then we found out about the inner squads, and obviously we were a little bit more jacked up. We're like, that's pretty cool. And we heard they were allowing fans in. So it was a great way to keep the year rolling. And, me personally, I don't think anyone in Tacoma was happy how our year ended. We had a great team, 88 wins, I think, something of that nature. We fell short. I had a bad taste in my mouth a little bit. I was like, dang, Vegas got us again. I was just excited. Like I said, it was an opportunity. It was going to be great to go see those guys pitch in that stadium, So for me, it was all bright spots. I tried to think of it the best way I could. Like I've always told you, I'm a big opportunity guy. An opportunity favors the strong. Go showcase your skills. And for me, it was, what can I do to help the team be ready? So when we heard about an inner squad, I think at that point we didn't pitch in a game for just over a week, right? But our catch play, we're like, no, like we're here to prepare these guys. Like go out there, give it your all, right? And try to punch them out, right? Keep the hitters ready and give a good steady mix throw strikes, give them something that they can feel prepared for. So the mindset's just how can we help? And I thought they treated us great. It's great to be up there, be in the dugout, locker room, good food. They treated us like kings. So it was awesome to be a part.
Hear all the time about this batter's eye at T-Mobile Park and how pitchers just love pitching in that stadium. So for you, when you're out there, did you notice anything? Was there anything where you were like, I would tear this up out here. Like this suits me. Talk to a non-player. What is it like pitching at T-Mobile Park? What goes on?
For me, I've never noticed the batter's eye thing. Obviously, I don't hit. I didn't know it was really a thing until I came over to this organization. But for me, the field conditions, the way that mound is put together, I know most fans probably don't really look at the quality of the mound, right? But for pitchers, it's huge. Your footing, the delivery starts from the ground up, right? And I think my first impression when I went out there was, wow, the mound is unbelievable. I mean, the way that they build that mound, it just makes you feel good. The backdrops, the visual for us, looking that way, home plate it's just, I don't know how to explain it. You can't really find the words. It just feels good. There's something about it. It just lifts you up. It makes you excited. And it didn't feel, some stadiums have a feeling like you're really far from home plate. I know every mound's 60 feet, 6 inches, but some feel like they're 65 feet. And, T-Mobile felt like you did close, like you felt on top of it. And it's just, I don't know. It's just a great feeling, great stadium. And then having the roof open, seeing that version of it, and then also the roof closed. It's just it was just cool just to be able to feel the stadium, look at the seats, and it's just such a beautiful place, man. Beautiful stadium.
We're going to manifest it, mate. You'll hopefully be there next year, and you'll get an opportunity and get to show your stuff on the biggest stage. And you said before this taxi squad was like a reward, and that's what I'd class it for you. 48 games, 3.36, 53 Ks, and possibly the biggest thing that I would say is everybody that I've mentioned your name to has said what a good teammate you are. Like we will talk off air with people and we'll be like, oh, I've had this person on, that person on. And no one's ever had a bad word to say about anyone. But there's people like yourself that folks are like, oh yeah, no, like ripping guy, or I've only heard good things. So, and that's a huge part of being a teammate as well. There's no good coming out and having a sub-1 ERA if you're an asshole and nobody likes you. So if you could do some self-reflection on your year, how would you describe and rate your 2025 season outside of that ERA and those numbers?
I would say it was a great year and probably my favorite season so far. And that's just not just on the field. Obviously, statistically, I've had, 2 good seasons in a row prior. But off the field, it just felt like there was so much going on, and especially in the PCL league. And to the main fans out there, I don't think they understand from a pitcher's view how that league can really, really eat you alive. So to be able to handle that side of it mentally, and then also AAA for us felt like there was a lot of guys in and out, right? And for me, I tried to look at it like what an opportunity to meet people, right? And, whether they're there long or they're short, leave an impact on somebody. Try to leave a good impression. Any new guy that comes in, make them feel welcome. And that's even a younger guy getting pulled up. So for me, it was my favorite year so far. It was a great coaching staff. And then the culture in the clubhouse. I'm one of those guys that, you try to uplift everybody, try to bring some energy. I try to make everybody laugh, a good bit. And even in the bullpen, for us, the first 3 innings, keep things light, keep it calm and have some fun. And it's like, once that 3rd, 4th inning rolls around, you read the game, it's like, okay, lock in. But yeah, man, it was just a good season, man. Great group of dudes. But yeah, probably my favorite one so far.
28, you're going to be 29 by the time next season rolls around, which makes me feel old because I can't grow the beard and I've got like the 3 years on you, so I'm not sure how I feel about this. I know that within you, you've got the hunger and desire to reach the show again, mate. But have you got some personal 2026 goals? What's your off-season plan going to look like? How are you going to achieve getting back up there so when I come over next year, I can harass you for a free baseball?
For me, it's just attack the off season. Like I said, the taxi squad, I looked at it like a blessing. I felt like I got a month head start heading into an off season, being able to use all their facilities, right? Their coaching, being able to work with those guys. And, we were throwing live hitters in Arizona, facing Colt Emerson, Rylan Thomas, Samad Taylor, these guys, Nick Raposo. And we looked at it like iron sharpens iron. And, Samad Taylor being in the box, he would say, hey, I see this, I see that, right? And we could actually talk during the live AB and compete. But it really did sharpen all of us. So I feel like even just in that month, I learned a lot. And I am, obviously looking forward to heading back next season. The Rule 5 draft scares me, being eligible for that. It'd be exciting to be picked, but hopefully Seattle does something, protects me so I don't, hopefully something good comes out of it. But, it's just, man, the next season for me is going to be continue to improve. The numbers will take care of themselves, but it's going to be how can I sharpen my tools even more? And for me, this coming week, next week, start rolling it all back and, really starting to ramp things up and, do a self-reflection. What do I think I was good at? All right, maintain that, right? What do I think needs to be better? And just be honest with myself and be like, yeah, I don't think you were good enough at this. And also attack those goals and get better. And be able to use the resources that we have with these coaches in Seattle who are incredible to fix those things and to get better at them. But 2026 for me is just going to be, obviously get to the big leagues. And wherever I'm at, if it's AAA, if it's the big leagues, win. I hate to lose. I can't stand it. So whatever level, whatever team, win, but then also just continue to improve and then try to leave an impact on guys, man. I'm big on that. Like being in Arizona, they had all the new draft guys that were in there and even, Royo, right, Laz, all the guys that we've met in spring training. But I try to look at it like a time, man, to speak to some guys, and it's like if you're sitting in the, the hot tub, cold tub, right, sauna, wherever you're at, try to have them ask questions, teach some guys some things, speak to them, make them feel welcome. Don't just sit in the big league training room. I'm going to go into the minor league one where everyone's sitting at, and speak to guys, say hello. And I want those guys to feel like they're welcome to, right? There is no, hey, we're above you or I'm at this level. No, we're all family. I don't care what level you're at. So for me, I would say to try to keep that in the next season too. And I know that this organization cares about culture a ton, as they should. But how can I personally continue to try to help the culture, right? Like we have some great guys. Samad Taylor, probably a locker room leader, right? And then you have the older guys like Jesse Hahn, people like that. Everyone plays a factor into helping. Speaking from their experience. So it's just for me to continue that in the next season.
So I've got two questions that come from that. Every time I talk to you, I prepare questions and then I have so many more that come from it. So we have a rule on here. We don't count another man's bread. If people want to find out what people's signing bonuses are, salaries, whatever, I have one condition to that. That's Juan Soto. We can absolutely go into that contract because that thing just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it is interesting. So your contract situation, all of this baseball contract stuff confuses me. I stick to my lane, which I think my value within the Mariners content community is getting a better conversation out of players than anyone else can get. I'm not going to try and put a roster together money-wise because that is not where my strong suit is. Where's your contract at? Does yours roll over? You mentioned the rule of 5. Do you need to sit and have a yarn, like a chat with the Mariners? How's this whole side work for you?
So Seattle for me, this will be my first year being eligible, not being on the 40-man anymore for the Rule 5. So that's the first opportunity. Like I said, I did as much as I could to have a great season where I'm hoping I want to be here, where I'm hoping Seattle selects my contract and puts me back on the roster just so I can sit here in peace and know, hey, I'm back. I don't have to worry about somebody else picking me. And then Seattle has me all for next season and the year after because I got such a late start in the Pro Bowl with what we covered on the first time I came on. It's just the craziness of how I got into this that, yeah, they're going to have me for 2 more seasons. So for me, it's just to continue to be the guy for them. My mind's on them. And I'm one of them guys that's just, I don't look at the yards next to me, man, and how their grass looks on the water, the grass I'm on, make it as green, great as it can be. So that's just where I'm at now. They have me for the next 2 seasons, which is a great place to be. But like I said, yeah, trying to get to the big leagues is the goal. And if it's the Rule 5, if that's my route to get there, obviously I want to take that. Yeah. But like I said, I can't say it enough how I want to be here. I love this organization. I've never had more fun playing the game than I did this year. And then, like I say, the people that they bring into that clubhouse, I've met some of my best friends I'll probably ever have. I've never been a part of guys that tight. And, we're still texting every day, going through fantasy football. And it's like, man, we still feel like we're in the locker room. There's been no radio silence from anybody. And I just, man, you enjoy that and love that. So that's just kind of where I'm at contract wise.
We have had a lot of good pitchers come on here and just some great people. And I'm going to forget a heap of blokes because I think we're up to about 35 guests now. But, the likes of Jimmy Joyce, Van Scoter, the Coastal guy. Who else have we had? Like, we've had Ryan Sloan, my good friend Charlie Bielenson, Farn Wraith. Like, there's a lot of guys that I feel like would really value a conversation with you. They're so young, they're so eager to learn, and they're so talented. But I have a job for you. 2 people. You need to take Kate Anderson under your wing because he is incredible. And Tyler Cleveland, I don't know if you know much about Tyler Cleveland. The bloke seems to be allergic to having an ERA. He just strikes blokes out everywhere, and he is a dark horse for me for like a big league spring training roster spot. Like he's that submarine arm, that different look. I think it's well worth, giving him a shot. So that's my job to you to speak to those two guys. But we do a lot of the prospects we have on do listen, which I didn't think they did, but they actually do. So if someone's listening right now, what advice would you give a young player heading into the off season that may have just been drafted or may feel like they've got something to prove? What advice would you give them on how to get results without overdoing it and cooking yourself before the year even starts?
Oh, man. I would say the biggest piece of advice is you're either coming from high school or you're coming from college, right? You go into the fall in your off season in college, everything is tailored out for you. You only have a choice, right? It's hey, it lifts at this time, right? And everything is so structured and scheduled. And the biggest thing that can hurt guys, I feel like with the other organizations I've been with, you're on your own. You control your day, you control what you do. So my biggest piece of advice was stay hungry, take some time off. It's a longer year. The Coastal just went to Omaha, right? And I try to tell those guys, imagine if at the end of that game, win or lose, coach looks at you and says, great first half, boys, let's go do it again. And I said, think about how you felt at the end of that season. An off season comes, best advice would be seek help, right? If you really don't know or you're unsure or you're even trying to guess or structure something, Seattle will send you the whole lifting program, right? They'll send you a whole throwing program. And my biggest thing would be just be disciplined. Do it. Don't say, hey, well, I can't do it today. Let me just do it tomorrow. No, do it today. I try to tell these guys, discipline is doing what you hate to do, but do it like you love it. Just do it. And over time, you'll learn to love it. So that would be the biggest piece of advice. Get help. All the coaches are great. Call them. Talk to them. They're some of the most personable people I've ever met, and they want to help you. So don't just go home and think, oh, I'm just going to hit the weights and don't have structure. Structure matters. Follow it. Stay consistent and communicate. Pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm thinking this. I kind of want to try this, right? And just talk. Have a conversation, an open dialogue. Because, one thing with me that I've learned with this organization is don't be shy. Just if you have something on your mind you want to try or add something, subtract something, let them know and they'll work through it with you. They might say, hey, let's try it. Look at Logan with 10 pitches, Bryce with 10 different pitches. They want everybody to have fun and continue to develop and evolve. So that would be the biggest thing. Stay disciplined, find structure, and just stay hungry. First year coming in, I'd be nervous, right? It's like you don't know what to expect. Why not show up in the best shape of your life? Why not show up healthy, ready to roll? That would be the biggest thing for me to tell any younger guy.
So the season's tough. I mean, life's tough. And one thing that you can never have enough of at any stage, but especially when things are tough, is that little bit of extra energy, especially when you got kids. Let me help. I don't think I've slept in weeks. I look horrible this morning. I need a full makeover. But usually the only thing that's getting me through, mate, is a bit of a morning cup of coffee, which is something that you and I both have in common. So you've got your own bean out there, which is incredible. It's the Backwards K collection. Just talk to me on how you go from, like we spoke about your path the last time, going from not seeing a future in baseball and working odd jobs to get you through to now having your own coffee line. Like, how does this happen?
Well, coffee, like you said, you need an energy picker-upper, right? And studying nutrition, health, all that stuff. Obviously, energy drinks, in my opinion, weren't the way to go. And I looked at it like, man, what's a healthy way to, get some caffeine, right? And I looked at coffee and I was like, oh, it's horrible. Tastes horrible. When I first tried it, right? I didn't like it. Well, continuing to drink it, right? You kind of just build a taste for it. I started really, really liking it. And, we're blessed where we get to travel the country and find all these little coffee shops, right? The brick and mortars. And, for me, I try to stay away from the big ones, right? Because I'm like, I want to try everyone's different little blend. And I looked at it one day and I'm like, man, I would love to have my own coffee. And luckily, I met a guy named Corey Withrow, who was a center for the San Diego Chargers, back then San Diego Chargers. And he had a coffee company called the King's Craft Coffee Company. And we met and we actually just talked about faith a little bit. And that's kind of how we started our thing. And he looked at me and was like, hey, dude, you seem really passionate about coffee. And I was like, yeah, I love coffee. And he said, hey, would you want to partner? He's like, let's build you some products and we taste test them and what you like and, build them to your style. And it kind of happened so quick. I think it all happened within 4 months. And, he roasts every bag of coffee. He does everything on his own. He takes so much pride in it. And I'm sure you can imagine NFL player super competitive, and he just wants everything to be the best. He loves his coffee, cares about it. And I'm just blessed that he brought me on and gave me an opportunity, to make something for myself. And also just, you learn a little bit about business, and you get to have fun. You get to meet people. You get to donate a little bit of it here and there and try to do some cool things. So, but yeah, it came off kind of quick, man. I'm like, even the bags, I got one here for you, which I'm going to send you some. And, that's the AK Espresso batch, which I love. The other two is a Nicaragua Sunrise batch. It's a dark roast. And then I got a Guatemala batch. That's a medium roast. So I try to hit all three: espresso, dark roast, medium roast, one of each. So yeah, it's been awesome.
I was going to ask, and I'm glad you pronounced them because Nicaragua is not a word that we use in Australia. That is not one that I was actually nervous about pronouncing. That have you got a go to, or have you got to go to at certain times? Like, what are you having pre-game? What's your when you and your missus are sitting down and you're having breakfast? What's your go to? Like, what suits what mood?
So for me in the morning, I love the espresso. I'm not a guy that likes cream or sugar or any of those things in my coffee. I just love the natural flavor. I always put it over ice. And in the morning, especially with Harry Ford, who I lived with in Tacoma, I'd whip up a pot of coffee every day and just do the espresso in the morning. You sit there and we'd talk in the kitchen, hang out, and just, I'd say the espresso is more the morning one. And then afternoon before a game, espresso can get you a little too amped up, right? And I like it in the morning leading into the day. But pre-game, there's nothing better to me than the Nicaragua one. The Guatemala one is great with a nice citrus flavor to it a little bit. It's just not dark enough for me. My taste, I kind of made that one to appeal to everybody. And people who want to get into coffee, because I'm sure the harsh taste at times can intimidate people and put people off like, oh, it's too strong. So I tried to make one that was a medium that, kind of applies to all people. But espresso in the morning and then the Nicaragua Sunrise batch in the afternoon.
I'm excited to get around it. I've started Christmas shopping, so I know what I'm getting my daughter, and my dad's big into coffee, and I know what I'm getting him, and I feel so uplifted that I don't have to worry about Christmas shopping now. So he's going to be getting a bag. But we spoke off air. One of the things that I'm most proud of about this platform is how big it's gotten. We're over 10,000 YouTube subscribers. There's another big following on Spotify and a couple more platforms that we've gotten. It's because of players like yourself who've come on, who've given up your time to help some bloke from Australia just talk about baseball. So for me, it's very important to give back. And we're going to be giving back 2 bags of beans from your collection. So all you've got to do as a listener is get in touch with me through our TikTok DMs, because I want to grow that platform a little bit more. So it was mentioned earlier in the episode how many strikeouts Austin threw this year. Send me through the details on that one. And the first 2 people that get to me will organise for this to get shipped to you. So I'm going to test out the international shipping with coffee beans for Christmas. So at this stage, we'll do it for just our US listeners. But, just try and get around the players. Like, the players have so many little side businesses and little hustles. So we're going to get around Austin with his. So the first 2 people who DM me on TikTok how many strikeouts Austin had this year, we're going to send you a couple of bags of coffee, and hopefully it turns into a love for them. We'll do that. We'll leave that open to everyone. But your off-season, another passion of yours, would definitely be spending time with those closest to you. Firstly, how is your missus going? And I know she's not listening right now and she won't listen to your interview, so this is a safe space to share. Have you got any wild plans or surprises for the off-season? Where are you going? Is it just quality time with her? Like, how are you going to use your time to mentally reload and get the good vibes right before you start up again?
Honestly, man, we're pretty simple. I went up to Pittsburgh for a week. I got to see, the extended family, brother, sister. And then now that we're back down here in Myrtle Beach, for us, it's just quality time. Just be around each other. I mean, that's my best friend. I love her to death. It's like, man, we just enjoy sitting around the house and making food and just hanging out, man. And, for me, the dog, I love my dog. I miss him all year long. We love to walk him together and spend some time with him. And then also with my in-laws, we like driving the 15 minutes south, hanging with them. But as far as crazy plans, man, I'm boring. I'm pretty plain Jane. I just want to hang out and just be around the people I love and just soak it in. And we've been watching the World Series, even though it kills me, we're not in it, but just spending time watching the events, that are kind of going on. That's pretty much it for me, man. I just like to just chill.
Request for the TV at the bar the other day to get turned off because I couldn't deal with it. It was hurting. So last one, I asked you this last time, and I've got to ask you it again. And keeping in mind, like it is incredibly hard for us to get on to people, which is probably everyone that comes on is like, oh, why haven't I heard about this? I'm like, I don't know, mate. Like I've been trying to get in touch with you for 6 months now, but if we were going to have a guest on the show, who should it be? And again, keeping in mind, you got to help us get there. Who should come on? Who should we interview and unpack their story?
Man, it's got to be Samad Taylor. Got to be. I'm just like, man, from his personality, who he is as a person, who he is as a father, a husband. That's an interesting guy to me. And then also his journey. A high school draft pick. 3 different organizations. He's been here in Seattle. Another 300 years, 17 homers, 50 bags. I mean, it's just, and he's a utility guy. And I think it'd be interesting because I've always wanted to pick his brain too and ask, how do you master all the, how can you just go from shortstop, second, outfield? Like what's he doing at home? You know what I mean? To prepare and do all that, especially, as a high school kid, you weren't a college guy. You didn't play in some big program where they really developed. You kind of were on your own, relying on the organizations that he was with at the time. So I think he'd be a great guy to have on. And he's funny guy. So I think he'd be great. And I'll help get him on there. I talk to him every day on FaceTime. So I'll make sure I'll get him on here.
Yeah, that. Well, mate, honestly, thank you so much for coming on a second time. I know there'll be a third, there'll be a fourth. You are an outstanding player. I value you as a person. I value how open you are every time you come on here, and there would be nothing better than seeing you in Northwest Green next year. So thank you, mate, and wishing you all the best for the off season and what's to come next year.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. And hey, my last thing I want to say too is I know all the players in the big leagues were saying it. And I know I haven't been up there and played, but I got my little piece of feeling a part of it. Shout out to Seattle, the fans, the city, everybody. Man, it made that season unbelievable. And my little sliver of being up there, wow. Like what's something to look forward to, more than that, and how they treat their players, how they love, and you can see the fans and their emotions on TV. So shout out to all the fans in Seattle, and you guys giving us a platform to do this too. So thank you guys.
So thanks once again to Austin for coming on. Great person, great player, and a great friend as well. I really enjoy learning about the game of baseball from him. And as somebody who's really interested in the athlete and the mentality side of the game, he just breaks it down so well for everybody. So hopefully you got as much out of that interview as I did. So just a reminder that Logan Gilbert signed jersey is still up for grabs. We need to hit 12,000 subscribers. 2 bags of Austin's own coffee liner up for grabs as well. How to win that, if you missed it, is in the interview. So make sure you go back and find that out. And just a big thank you to everybody for coming along and supporting this journey. It is the off season now. It gets difficult to create content. There are only so many times we can speak about a potential Josh Naylor extension. So hopefully, we got to recap the starting rotation today. We'll get to the infield next time and just really recap and celebrate what a great year this was for the Mariners. This was the furthest this franchise has ever been. And while we certainly don't want to sit here and think the job's done and pat ourselves on the back, this provides us with an exceptional launch pad for what we're moving into in 2026. So thanks again for joining me. Make sure you get around our giveaways. And as always, stay safe, stay well, and go Mariners.